Episode 99. That azure dragon truly lived up to its reputation as a wind attribute magic tool's manifested spirit. Spurred by senior brother Lu's full power, it shot out later but arrived first, intercepting Han Li's giant sword mid-flight and engaging it once more. Seeing this, senior brother Lu let out a huge sigh of relief, a cold sweat breaking out all over his body. He tried several more times to cast spells and ambush Han Li, but each attempt was forcefully repelled by Han Li using the same method. He still had no way to deal with Han Li, which left senior brother Lu feeling utterly stifled and frustrated. He had no choice but to rely on his deep reserves of magic power and settle in for a war of attrition. Meanwhile, Han Li began pulling out various small plants and crystal-like objects from his storage pouch, stuffing them into his mouth one after another, and chewing vigorously. Senior brother Lu could only stare, dumbfounded, completely baffled by what the other was up to now. This situation, where he couldn't guess his opponent's intentions and was completely in the dark, felt deeply wrong to him. A sense of foreboding took root. But for a man who prized his own life too dearly, even with a spirit far surpassing the ordinary, he was, for the moment, utterly at a loss. As time ticked by, his heart grew heavier. The green light around the azure flood dragon began to dim, yet the giant sword's radiance remained undimmed. Finally, senior brother Lu could no longer contain the dread rising within him.
Impossible! It's impossible! My magic power far surpasses yours. Even with a mid-grade spirit stone for replenishment, you shouldn't still have reserves left. You should have run dry before I did.
The azure dragon totem teetered on the brink of collapse. Senior brother Lu's desperate shout was like the final, furious bark of a mad dog caught in a trap, brimming with bitter resentment. Seeing his scheme come to fruition piece by piece, Han Li couldn't help but break into a smile. But at the other's words, his lips twisted slightly, and his smile turned into a sneer.
I don't have time to explain things to a dead man walking. Ending him is the priority. My magic power is almost gone. Why would I waste my breath arguing with him?
With that thought, Han Li ignored the other's question entirely. He pointed a finger, and the giant sword's radiance flared even brighter, grinding the azure dragon down bit by bit until it was only about 10 feet long. The cyan light around it had faded to the point of being almost invisible.
Seeing this, senior brother Lu was utterly and completely despaired. A will to fight to the death surged within him, and a glint of madness gradually surfaced in his eyes.
Without a sound, he suddenly yanked back the last vestiges of magic power from the green dragon. In a flash, it reverted to its original form and plummeted from the sky.
Then, paying no heed to the giant sword cleaving down toward him, he used that magic power to rapidly condense a massive wind blade and, without a moment's hesitation, hurled it viciously at Han Li.
Seeing this, Han Li's heart lurched. He immediately manipulated the greatsword to slash straight down at his opponent's head, even as the wind blade was being hurled his way. Without a backward glance to see the result, he shot forward, covering several yards in an instant. After several exchanges, Han Li knew the wind blades were terrifyingly fast. Without using his smoke-shifting steps to dodge immediately, his unprotected body could be caught off guard and sliced in two. That would be a death he could never accept. The wind blade was indeed fast. Han Li had just darted away when it arrived at the spot where he'd been standing. With a sudden turn, it curved to follow his escape path and shot after him once more. Han Li didn't have time to think. He pushed his smoke-shifting steps to the limit, weaving left and right in a tight space until he conjured several phantom afterimages. The wind blade chased his tail like a shadow, but it just couldn't catch up. Han Li knew full well that running in a straight line would never outpace the wind blade's swift slash. Only by relying on nimble, close-quarters footwork could he hope to stay safe for the moment. This was the main reason he dared to forego a defensive spell from the very start. With a soft thwip, the wind blade suddenly went out of control, veering off at an angle and plunging into the dirt. It carved a deep furrow before vanishing without a trace. Only then did Han Li let out a long sigh of relief, his heart finally settling back down from his throat.
Using a mortal world's lightness skill to dodge a cultivator's spell, that was a near-death experience.
Han Li plopped down on the ground. He looked up across the way. The wind wall was gone. The Lu senior brother, who had been hiding behind it now, lay in two pieces, motionless. Above the two halves of the corpse, the giant sword hovered, its faint gray glow now utterly wan and lifeless. Han Li raised his hand and beckoned toward the air. The great sword immediately turned and shot back. When it reached him, it reverted to its talisman form and drifted lightly down into his palm. Just as Han Li reached out to catch the talisman treasure, the paper spontaneously combusted with a sharp sizzle during its descent. In moments, it was reduced to a handful of ashes, which the mountain winds scattered without a trace. Han Li stared at the sight, momentarily stunned. But then, a wry smile spread across his face.
This talisman treasure is completely spent. Its remaining power was finally exhausted in this drawn-out war of attrition. What a waste of such a precious talisman treasure. But to take down a formidable opponent like senior martial brother Lu, how could it not come at a cost? Still, that cyan gel banner of his is a pretty decent trophy. It should more than make up for the loss of this talisman treasure. Not to mention, there are 2 Foundation establishment pills waiting for me to claim. That brutal fight was absolutely worth it. If taking this Foundation establishment pill can secure my Foundation establishment, then I won't have to risk my life in that blood-forbidden trial. After all, there must be quite a few cultivators as strong as senior brother Lu there, right? And there's probably a whole heap of them who are even more troublesome than he is.
After a moment, Han Li felt his magic power had recovered somewhat from absorbing the spirit stone in his hand. He stood up first, intending to pick up the azure banner flag that wasn't far from him.
But as soon as he straightened his back and stood up, a sharp, stabbing pain erupted in his dantian, as if countless steel needles were being driven into it. The agony forced Han Li to double over, his face turning deathly pale.
Han Li remained motionless. After about the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, he finally took a deep breath, feeling the stabbing pain subside a little. Han Li's expression was a bit frustrated, his mouth twitching a few times. He knew perfectly well why this was happening.
It must be from swallowing all those aged medicinal herbs just now. I managed to absorb some of the spiritual energy from those herbs in time, but far more of it gathered in my dantian, becoming a foreign substance. And it's mixed with all sorts of medicinal impurities I can't even identify. If I don't purge them soon, the consequences will be dire.
Han Li knew full well that this brute force method of swallowing the spirit pill would inevitably backfire on him. But at the time, to save his own skin, he had no choice but to take the risk. Still, this method of forcibly absorbing spiritual qi proved to be a great help to him in this war of attrition. But simply devouring herbs wasn't enough to keep Han Li going to the end. Beyond the faster energy supply from the mid-grade spirit stone, the other key to his victory was canceling his own defensive spell, the water shield. A couple of years ago, while researching minor casting techniques, I learned something by chance from senior brother Wu Feng. Most low-level disciples today have a misconception when using talismans. They all think that aside from the bit of spiritual power needed to activate the talisman,
A talisman doesn't consume any of the user's own magic power.
that's actually a common misconception. In reality, once a talisman is activated, the spell it casts remains connected to the user through a fine thread of spiritual energy. This link is there precisely to allow the caster to control and manipulate the spell. If the spell never dissipates, the user will automatically and continuously expend magic power to maintain this spiritual thread. Qi condensation disciples can't see or sense these spirit threads, and the magic power needed to sustain them is negligible in the short term, so most disciples simply overlook them. Even the few disciples who knew the truth considered it a trivial matter, so they never made a big deal out of it.
Senior brother Wu Feng was one of the few who knew. He mentioned it to me casually during a chat. I even ran a few tests myself to experience it firsthand, and sure enough, it was true.
Realizing this fight would be a drawn-out affair, Han Li immediately thought of this fact. Without hesitation, he dropped his defensive spell, all to conserve more magic power. It might seem negligible at first glance, but over time, the drain on his magic power is far from light. And clearly, that senior brother Lu was unaware of this. His cautious nature kept him maintaining that fatal wall-sealing art, not realizing it was this very technique that was leading him further down the path to ruin. And so, in the end, it was this small reserve of magic power that allowed Han Li to outlast his opponent. Otherwise, with just those two advantages, he might not have been able to outlast his opponent. Even so, Han Li felt this encounter had been extremely perilous.
I only managed to keep my life by the skin of my teeth, pulling every trick in the book. His strength truly was above mine. But in the end, I'm the one who survived, not him.
Once the pain had subsided a little more, Han Li couldn't resist. He began to shuffle his way over. He finally shuffled over to where the green pepper chess piece had fallen, bent down with some effort to pick up the magic tool, then, delighted, examined it several times with his spiritual sense before happily stowing it away in his storage pouch. He then made his way over to senior Marshal Brother Lu's corpse. After a cursory glance at the gruesome scene, he began to rummage through the spoils of war. He easily found the other's storage pouch on the half of the corpse. Without ceremony, Han Li upended it, sending its contents spilling out onto the ground. His eyes immediately fell on the bottle and box containing the Foundation establishment pill.
His heart leaped with joy. Without a second thought for anything else, he immediately bent down and scooped up the box and the bottle. He opened it to check. Sure enough, inside was a single, brilliantly blue pill. The smell was a bit pungent, but he could still sense the powerful spiritual energy it contained. Han Li's smile widened. Since he'd confirmed the Foundation establishment pill was genuine, he had no mind to identify the other items now. This place had just seen a fierce battle. It was no place to linger. The best course was to slip away immediately.
Han Li swiftly put everything away, carefully tucked Lu Shixing's storage pouch close to his body, and only then felt a bit more at ease. He straightened up, about to stretch, when suddenly a rush of wind sounded from behind, as if something was pouncing at him.
Han Li was shocked and tried to dodge to the side, but a sudden violent pain in his dantian made him falter. A woman seized him in a powerful embrace.
Han Li was stunned for a moment, but with the stabbing pain in his dantian and his limbs still weak from the recent battle, he simply couldn't break free.
Han Li had already guessed who was behind him, but he couldn't help turning his head for a look. Yet before his face had even turned halfway, a beautiful, delicate countenance was already pressed close against his, showering him with kisses.
It was indeed Junior Sister Chen, the one who had been unable to move.
At this moment, Junior Sister Chen was blushing furiously, relentlessly pestering Han Li.
It turned out that during the recent battle, although this Junior Sister Chen was immobilized by the sealing technique, the fight between Han Li and senior brother Lu hadn't touched her at all. Every clash and blow had been carefully steered away from the spot where she lay. When the battle was over, she was completely unscathed.